Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. One of the primary issues at the moment seems to be around Elon Musk. There is nothing but in-depth and annoying friggin' conversations about this man. Even his father Errol got in on this trip of social media, the power of Elon Musk, and his father, who is a nobody, was interviewed on GB News the other day. No, I lie. He was actually on Times Radio, and they were asking him what he thought about Tommy Robertson becoming Prime Minister of Great Britain. Which, and first, there's a few things about this issue. I guess the primary issue is why in the hell would you ask someone who's the father of Elon Musk? Why would you even ask them about what they thought? Like, why is their opinion important at all? I don't think Elon's opinion's important, period, but why would you inquire with his father about these issues? I will never know. So it's bizarre how this whole thing has taken this effort by social media people such as Elon Musk and now Zuckerberg in order to influence the way people think. It's almost like they've just discovered how much power they have. Elon Musk has recognised his power because he's able to buy the United States election for Donald Trump, and he's working on the same proposal for Germany, Great Britain, France, and maybe even Australia, which is even of greater concern to someone like me, not to you in the rest of the world because you don't give a shit about Australia. Probably have trouble trying to find us on a map. But nevertheless, his pervasiveness is immense. And his efforts to become relevant. And, it's one of those things whereby you think, well, even talking about him now is giving him, to some extent, some sort of power we don't want him to have. But we must have these conversations about the character. For reasons that I would not. Well, I'd like not to have these conversations, but this is my thing. I do social media, I do YouTube, and with my limited number of subscribers, I like to have a conversation about things that worry me, and because I believe to some extent those same things that concern me may also concern you, even though many of you give me pretty negative feedback. But nevertheless, I'm still persisting because that's who I am. But I wanted to refer to a particular. I've got a number of clips here or news items actually that I wanted to refer to. And the first one I think is this one, which is the Germany's reflecting on how they feel about Musk, and particularly what he had to say in relation to the right-wing party that he wishes to support. So anyway, this is what the Germans had to say. So Olaf Scholz, who's the Chancellor, I think, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has urged voters not to let the owners of social media channels decide next year's snap election after Elon Musk repeatedly endorsed the far-right party Alternative für Deutschland, AfD. In a New Year's Eve address recorded for television made available before its broadcast on Tuesday, Scholz and German citizens alone had the power to decide, quote, where Germany goes from here after the general election on 20th of February. It will not be decided by owners of social media channels, yells Scholz, I think, and it will not determine the country's future. In our debate, one can be forgiven for sometimes thinking the more extreme an opinion is, the more attention it will garner. Rather, Scholz said, the fate of German society will be up to the vast majority of reasonable and decent people. And I guess my issue around that is like, who's now the reasonable and decent? I don't understand who they are or where they are. I think reasonable and decent people voted for Donald Trump, in November. But those same reasonable and decent people are likely to be the ones who will suffer under a Trump administration, under any right-wing administration for that point. So it's somewhat of a concern. And the other concern, of course, is to what extent is this likely to affect us in Australia? So when I'm talking about Australia, I'm also referring to other countries as well. I'm thinking of Germany, Europe in general, UK, which are not now part of Europe. Sad for you, but nevertheless, that's the way it is. So there's this particular one as well, which is in the ABC. After US election, Elon Musk could turn focus to Europe and Australia. The world's richest man, blah, 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 Elon Musk, the billionaire is increasingly injecting himself into European politics. After the past 6 months, Musk has been outspoken about issues far beyond American borders. The billionaire has argued that Britain's turning into a police state and claimed that the once shunned German far-right political party alternative AfD is the country's only hope. He's also called for a new election in the United Kingdom, despite one being held in July last year, and argued that only reform can save Britain. So Nigel Farage's party can save Britain. But now he's fallen out with Farage, incidentally. Reform UK is a populist right-wing group. We know that about Brexit and so on. The PM met before Christmas at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, where they discussed political tactics. And there are reports Musk is planning to donate up to $160 million to the party, which for a party like Farage's party is a lot of dough and can buy you a lot of votes. And of course, the other issue, of course, is whether that is allowed under UK law, I guess. So I'm not too 100% sure about that. I'm sure someone online will tell me. Farage told GB News that Musk said the genuine fears that the mother country of the English-speaking world is going down the tubes, and he agrees Britain needs to reform. This week, the US tech mogul released a series of posts on social media platform in an apparent attempt to discredit UK's Prime Minister. I talked about that in a previous post. If you wish to go to that, that is fine. In several posts, he called for the release of the far-right British activist Tommy Robinson, who is serving an 18-month prison sentence for contempt of court for repeating false allegations a Syrian refugee schoolboy was a violent thug. And I had someone respond to one of my that I cited actually in my last post, who suggested that perhaps I had all those details wrong, and that I should watch Robinson's documentary on Silent, which I believe is just a racist video having a go at Pakistani people because of the involvement of the Pakistani gang in conscripting young girls or forcing young girls to have sex. A terrible thing. No one's going to deny all of that. But it has become, I think, a kind of anti-Muslim trope in order to suggest that all Muslims and anybody who comes into the country that is not white is of some description a criminal. And we know that Donald Trump's been doing that for years in relation to citing immigrants as being the worst of the worst, rapers and so forth, and criminals, and all coming from asylums. We don't have asylums anymore, Donald, but nevertheless, you seem to be living in the past. Long way in the past. Ku Klux Klan type in the past. So there's that, and there's this concept, I guess, that this style of politics will eventually become evident here in Australia. So the other post that I wanted to highlight too was something that came out today, which I thought was interesting, and which I've been waiting for this because it had said, and I've posted about this before, that it is inevitable that the tentacles, whatever it is, the web, literally, that Elon Musk is casting will be so pervasive that we'll all be sort of sucked into it, as we are now in a way, because we're already talking about it. So we have become involved in his efforts to create disruption in our communities and disruption around the world. And this man, through this one failed social media site, has done just that. And in passing, I no longer post on X. I'm now on Blue Sky. It isn't as good as X in terms of number of people and stuff, but I will not do anything to enhance Elon Musk by contributing to his toxic social media platform. So in this particular post, which only came out a couple of hours ago, the Greens have claimed echoes of Trumpianism are already permeating Australian politics through the opposition party's rhetoric and policies as speculation over when the federal election will be held continues. The party's acting leader, Sarah Hanson, now remember this has come from the Greens, it hasn't come from the Labor Party as yet, but I predict that at some time it will. So she says, well, this afternoon, big tech companies, including X and Meta, were sucking up to the incoming US President-elect Donald Trump and could boost their preferred political parties over others in an election campaign. Now, the point I think she's making there is that that would be somewhat enticing to someone like Peter Dutton here in Australia, who's the Liberal Party leader, whereby he could see an opportunity to be able to use their influences to convey misinformation and disinformation to social media users, which is mainly these days primarily is young people. So the way to get to these young people, as was proved by Donald Trump, was to do a lot of podcasts, to use TikTok, to use Facebook, and of course to use X. So it's going to happen, and it's going to happen here in Australia because we have an election in the next 3 months, and we don't build up we're not the United States where one election finishes and as soon as that one's declared another one starts. Basically, we wait and we have times, we have time limits, and so we know when elections are going to take place, but we don't tend to do what you guys do, which is simply to have every waking moment an election. So back to Sarah Hanson-Young. Overnight, Meta, and I'll talk about this in a moment, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, announced a decision to ditch its independent fact checkers. Hanson-Young labelled the changes a dangerous move and damaging for democracy. The South Australian Centre has also taken aim at X's owner Elon Musk, who has recently come under fire intervening in UK and US politics. On Wednesday, Hanson said she predicted Musk would platform Peter Dutton, and this is what I reckon he'll do as well, so I agree with this idea, that he will platform Peter Dutton and the Liberal Party above others on the next election because their policies echoed some of Trump's own, she said. We've now got a situation where we've got two big tech billionaires, Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, thinking that they should run the world, a comment and a suggestion I have also made, that they should dictate what is said, who says it, how loud it is said, and whether it's truthful. Echoes of Trumpianism are already coming through from the Dutton opposition party and in their election policies. And I think that is the thing that most of us need to be wary of. And one of the conversations that I've noticed happening on social media, and particularly on YouTube, is in relation to how do we combat this? How do those of us that don't want these people influencing how people should think, and that's not just because their right-wing, the political views are right-wing, it's the corrupt nature of what they have to say. Why isn't it that we can't have a social media framework that is simply people having conversations? The initial idea of the internet was to build this community so that people could have conversations, could debate, could argue, do all those sorts of things, but not to be used specifically as a news media outlet. That has never been the intention, should never be the intention, and clearly Musk and Zuckerberg are now using the two largest social media platforms in the world are going to be used in order to suck up to politicians who favour them. So if we put in more restrictions, if governments place more restrictions on social media and what they can say, or at least make them responsible for hate speech, then they're going to kick back against all of that. And so to have politicians in their hip pocket that they can use for that is obviously in their favour. So just more on the Zuckerberg thing, because that just happened today as well. Social media giant has announced it will implement an Elon Musk-inspired solution on its platforms Facebook, Instagram and Threads to combat misinformation. The end of its fact-checking partnership will begin in the United States first, with the possibility of it being extended to other countries over the social media company after the social media company examines regulatory requirements. Rather than pay independent fact-checkers to flag and debunk misleading posts, Meta founder Mark Zuckerberg said the company would introduce a different model already being used by rival platform X. And how good has that gone? You know, it's been a disaster. Community Notes, formerly Birdwatch before it was rebranded, is a feature on X that relies on crowdsourcing to flag potential misleading content that began widespread in 2023. Mr. Musk praised the program as awesome, and he applauded Mr. Zuckerberg after the announcement. So what is Community Notes, and it's effective? Is it effective? Community Notes are breakout boxes that appear underneath posts, so it's important that we understand this, I think. The post on X that has been flagged as misleading or false. These notes are written by platform users who are eligible to sign up for the program. So who are those users and what makes them eligible? The note appears after users reach a majority, a consensus on its accuracy, and it includes a correction, often accompanied by a link to an online source supporting the fact check. Any X-user can sign up to write a community note so long as their account is at least 6 months old, they had a verified phone number, and no recent violations on X's rules. So the question is, who can do that? Well, apparently anybody can. So is that really what we need? We basically need a reliable set of individuals, people, organisations who don't have an agenda. Now, the real question is, how do you get that? Like, who do you employ, if you employ anybody at all, that doesn't have an agenda? And the other problem for me, I think, always has been, and this maybe sounds like I'm siding with Musk and Zuckerberg, but how do you decide what is factual and what is not? What is disinformation and what is misinformation? And how do those distortions occur? And who creates them? And how do you fact check the facts when there are so many facts that are different? You know, and an example of that, I think, is the New Orleans terrorist attack, because when that first came out, Newsmax and Fox were all saying that it was someone who came from Mexico, because the vehicle that they had at one point, it was a rental, had been in Mexico, been traced to Mexico. That the person, because of the colour of their skin and because of their name, were definitely from another country. Now, none of those, now at that point, they could have been identified as facts, and they were, because that's how they were presented, but they weren't facts. They were later disproved. And I think organisations who make the wrong, particularly news organisations, who say they have the facts and then are proved that they are wrong, they should be penalised at some level for that. And of course, the systems we have to penalise news media is inconsequential anyway. So, you know, let me know what you think about the power of Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and the impact that's going to have on you wherever you might live. And if you're in Australia, how do you think that's going to impact you? Is it something that's going to affect us come the election? And do you think Peter Dutton? Interestingly enough, they didn't mention Anthony Albanese. They mentioned Peter Dutton and the Liberal Party as being those people most likely to benefit from any influence that Musk has, because it is so right-leaning. where does this place the left? How do we combat all of this stuff? I'm trying to do my bit because I've got a YouTube channel, but what can the rest of us do? Let me know in the comment section below. And remember, in the meantime, subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications and so on. So in the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.